The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Glory to you, O Lord. Standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary of Magdala. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple there whom he loved, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her into his home. After this, aware that everything was now finished, in order that the scripture might be fulfilled, Jesus said, "I thirst." There was a vessel filled with common wine. So they put a sponge soaked in wine on a sprig of hyssop and put it up to his mouth. When Jesus had taken the wine, he said, "It is finished." And bowing his head, he handed over the Spirit. Now since it was preparation day, in order that the bodies might not remain on the cross on the Sabbath day of that week was a solemn one, the Jews asked Pilate that their legs be broken and they be taken down. So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first, and then of the other one who was crucified with Jesus. But when they came to Jesus and saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. But one soldier thrust his lance into his side, and immediately blood and water flowed out. The Gospel of the Lord. Yeah, there's a lot going on in our celebration of this feast today of Mary, Mother of the Church, and there's a lot going on in this gospel passage. There are echoes, believe it or not. I don't know how much I want to go into it, but there are echoes of Genesis here in the final scene of Jesus' life, the way that John tells it. I think that's significant if we take, for example, even just say the evangelist's intent on the evangelist is intent on the fact that the evangelist is intent on preaching the whole scope and narrative of sacred scripture from Genesis on, and we see that same desire, that same it's more than a desire, it's the same compulsion in St. Luke. He wants us to have the whole sweep of sacred scripture. And it's important that, of course, Mary is featured in it, but there's a lot going on here. The reason why we get, I'd have to believe, the reason why we get this last little scene of the scriptures where blood and water flows out his side, the fathers of the church saw this as, in fact, the birth of the church. In a similar way to, by which Eve was taken out of the side of Adam as he slept, so now Jesus, as he sleeps in death on the cross, blood and water flow out, and blood and water in this sense the symbols of baptism and the Eucharist. So there's a lot going on, but we see here also Mary's centrality. She was central in the Gospel of John from the first sign all the way to this, the last sign where Jesus is saying, "It is finished." The revelation of God's glory is finished. Perhaps even the revelation of the divine purposes, the revelation of the way that God is going to achieve what he set out to accomplish. It is finished. We remember Jesus turning to Mary at Cana and saying, "It now is not my hour," and yet here it is. Right there, Jesus turns water into the best wine anybody's ever tasted, and here he's given the cheapest wine there is to sip on the cross. Don't take it. But he's given it right on the sprig of hyssop when they put it up to his mouth, and taking the wine, he said, "It is finished." Yeah, this is the cheap common wine that the soldiers would have had for themselves. There's a lot of kind of reversal type stuff here. Yeah, and we see that, of course, throughout the scriptures. But again, this is our chief focus. Jesus turns to his beloved disciple and says, "Behold your mother." And from that hour, he takes her into his home. And we see Mary is the mother of the church. The church is Marian. The church is Marian because again, if we track it from Luke's gospel, the visitation of the Annunciation, which is the visitation of the angel to her, the words of greeting, that she has been chosen for this particular place in God's plan. He's greeted with the joyful and eager, exuberant yes of Mary. Yeah, this is the foundation of the church. The church has nothing on her own. The church is nothing of her own, except in response to the call of God to bring Jesus to life in the world. This is the church at our heart. And if we follow this story all the way through to Pentecost, which is the reason why we have this feast today, Mary is with the apostles as they pray for the outpouring of the Spirit, and as the tongues of fire come to rest on their head. Mary is there, and she's there as the mother of the church also. We can think of, I don't know if we want to perhaps take the time to think of who Mary is to us. Mary, as mother of the church, is our mother also. And so how do we live out that relationship with Mary? We ought to take time to cultivate that relationship with her, precisely because she is the prototype of who we are called to be together, corporately, and also individually. Right? We're called to again respond with eager exuberance to God and His call, and we're called likewise to bring Christ to birth in the world, and we do that as we grow ourselves towards full Christian maturity, as we grow ourselves in submission to the divine purposes, offering ourselves whole and entire to God, just as she did. We can think of the ups and downs of her life. Right? It wasn't all so easy, simple, straightforward for her. I mean, we could read this gospel passage today, the great challenges that she endured and through which she persevered. Well, if we have some strength of her own yes, if we have some strength of her own submission to God today, then we too can persevere in the face of trial and tribulation, and we too can persevere in faith. Right? We don't have to know the entire unfolding of God's story to know that we have a part to play, and that He's catching us up into the action, and that He will give us what we need to sustain us as we're about the advancing of His plan and His purposes in the world.